The scent of sun-baked earth and hay still clings to my memory, a phantom aroma that returns whenever I think of that summer, that farm, that man. It was more than just a season, it was a revelation, a shift in the landscape of my heart. I remember the first time I saw him, silhouetted against the golden fields, his form strong and sure. There was an undeniable pull, a magnetic force that drew me in, a feeling I'd never experienced before. It wasn't just physical, it was deeper, a connection that resonated in the quiet spaces of my soul. He was everything I wasn't: grounded, earthy, confident in a way I could only dream of. I, a city boy lost in the vastness of the countryside, felt like a sapling reaching for the sun, desperate for roots. He was the earth, the sun, the very air I breathed. I remember the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, a genuine warmth that radiated outwards, making me feel seen, truly seen for the first time in my life. That initial spark, that unspoken understanding, ignited a flame within me, a flame that burned with a quiet intensity, a secret desire that I both cherished and feared. He showed me his harvest that day, not just the fruits of his labor, but something much more profound, something that changed the course of my life forever. It started with a simple invitation, a casual "come, let me show you what I've been working on." But there was something in his voice, a subtle undercurrent that hinted at something more, something that made my heart pound in my chest. I followed him, my footsteps echoing in the stillness of the afternoon, the anticipation building with every stride. The air was thick with the scent of ripe tomatoes, sweet corn, and the earthy aroma of the soil itself. It was a symphony of smells, a sensory overload that heightened my awareness, making me feel more alive than I had ever felt before. He led me through rows of vibrant green, the plants heavy with the bounty of the season. He pointed out the plumpness of the melons, the deep red of the peppers, the delicate fuzz on the peaches. He spoke of the land with a reverence that was contagious, his words painting a picture of hard work, dedication, and the deep satisfaction of nurturing life from the earth. I watched him, mesmerized not just by his words, but by the way his hands moved, strong and gentle, as he touched the plants. There was a connection between him and the land, a symbiotic relationship that was both beautiful and awe-inspiring. I felt a pang of longing, a yearning to be part of that connection, to be part of his world. He turned to me, his eyes meeting mine, and for a moment the world seemed to stop. The air crackled with unspoken words, with a tension that was both exhilarating and terrifying. I saw something in his eyes, a flicker of recognition, a hint of the same longing that I felt within me. It was a moment of pure vulnerability, a shared secret that hung in the air between us. He reached out, his hand brushing against mine, a fleeting touch that sent shivers down my spine. It was a small gesture, almost imperceptible, but it spoke volumes. It was an invitation, a silent acknowledgement of the connection that had sparked between us. In that moment, standing in the middle of his harvest, surrounded by the abundance of the land, I knew that my life would never be the same. He had shown me his harvest, not just the fruits of his labor, but the depths of his soul, and in doing so, he had awakened something within me, something that I had never known existed. The touch, brief as it was, lingered in the air between us, a silent promise hanging heavy with unspoken desires. He pulled his hand back, a slight flush rising on his cheeks, and I mirrored his reaction, my own heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. The moment passed, but its echo reverberated through me, a constant reminder of the unspoken connection that pulsed beneath the surface of our conversation. He continued to explain the intricacies of his farm, the different varieties of crops he cultivated, the challenges of weather and pests, the sheer joy of seeing a seed grow into something bountiful. I listened, my mind half on his words, half on the electric charge that had passed between us. The sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the fields, painting the landscape in hues of orange and purple. The air grew cooler and the scent of the earth intensified, a rich, intoxicating aroma that filled my senses. He offered me a freshly picked tomato, still warm from the sun, and I took it, my fingers brushing against his once more. The taste was exquisite, sweet and juicy, a burst of summer in my mouth. As I savored the flavor, I watched him, the way the setting sun illuminated his features, highlighting the strength of his jawline, the gentle curve of his lips. He was a man of the earth, rooted in its soil, his very being a testament to its power. And I, the city boy, felt drawn to him like a moth to a flame, captivated by his raw, untamed energy. We walked back towards the farmhouse, the silence between us no longer awkward but filled with a quiet understanding. The farmhouse was a simple structure built of weathered wood, but it exuded a warmth and charm that was instantly inviting. He showed me around the small kitchen with its wood-burning stove, the cozy living room with its comfortable armchairs, the simple bedroom with its patchwork quilt. It was a far cry from the sterile apartment I called home, but it felt more like home than any place I had ever been. He offered me a glass of iced tea and we sat on the porch, watching the stars begin to appear in the darkening sky. The conversation flowed easily between us, a comfortable mix of small talk and deeper revelations. He told me about his life on the farm, the challenges he faced, the rewards he reaped. I told him about my life in the city, my work as a writer, my dreams of someday escaping the concrete jungle. We talked for hours, the time passing unnoticed, lost in the shared space of our conversation. As the night deepened, a sense of intimacy settled between us, a feeling of connection that transcended words. I felt a pull towards him, a desire to be closer to him, to explore the depths of the connection that had sparked between us. He seemed to feel it too, a silent acknowledgement that hung in the air, thick with unspoken longing. The air crackled with anticipation, a sense of something about to happen, something that would change everything. He stood up, stretching his arms above his head, and I watched him, mesmerized by the way his muscles moved beneath his shirt. He turned to me, his eyes locking with mine, and a shiver ran down my spine. He reached out, his hand taking mine, and this time the touch was not fleeting. His fingers intertwined with mine, his grip firm and warm, and a jolt of electricity surged through me. He pulled me towards him gently, and I followed, my heart pounding in my chest. We stood there, inches apart, the air between us charged with unspoken desires. I could feel his breath on my face, warm and sweet, and I closed my eyes, anticipating the moment that was about to come. His hand moved to my cheek, his touch feather light, and I leaned into it, my senses heightened, my body trembling with anticipation. He whispered my name, his voice husky and low, and I opened my eyes, meeting his gaze. The look in his eyes was unmistakable, a mixture of desire and vulnerability, and I knew in that moment that I had found something special, something that I had been searching for my whole life. He leaned in, his lips brushing against mine, a tentative touch that sent shivers down my spine. It was a kiss that spoke volumes, a silent promise of something more, something deeper. And as our lips met, the world seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of us standing there in the darkness, surrounded by the silence of the farm, our hearts beating in unison. The kiss was a spark igniting a fire that had been smoldering beneath the surface for hours. It started tentatively, a gentle exploration, a hesitant touch of lips against lips. But as the moment deepened, the kiss intensified, becoming more passionate, more urgent. It was a kiss that spoke of longing, of unspoken desires, of a connection that transcended words. His hands moved to my hair, his fingers tangling in the strands, pulling me closer. I wrapped my arms around his neck, my body pressed against his, feeling the warmth of his skin through his shirt. The world around us faded away, the silence of the farm enveloping us in its embrace. There was only the kiss, the feel of his lips on mine, the pounding of our hearts in unison. It was a moment of pure connection, a merging of souls, a silent acknowledgement of the feelings that had been growing between us. As the kiss deepened, a wave of emotion washed over me, a mixture of excitement, fear, and pure, unadulterated joy. I had never felt anything like this before, this intense connection, this overwhelming desire. It was as if a part of me had been missing and he had filled that void, completing me in a way I had never thought possible. We broke the kiss, breathless, our foreheads touching, our eyes locked in the darkness. The silence between us was no longer awkward but filled with a quiet understanding, a shared secret that hung heavy in the air. He whispered my name again, his voice husky and low, and I shivered, the sound sending a thrill through me. He cupped my face in his hands, his touch gentle and reassuring, and I leaned into it, my eyes closing involuntarily. He kissed me again, a softer kiss this time, a tender expression of the emotions that were swirling between us. It was a kiss that spoke of vulnerability, of trust, of the fragile beginnings of something beautiful. We stood there for a long time, lost in each other's arms, the silence of the farm our only companion. The stars twinkled above us, their light casting a soft glow on the fields, illuminating the landscape in a magical, ethereal light. It was a perfect moment, a moment that I knew I would cherish forever. But as the night wore on, a sense of unease began to creep in. A small voice in the back of my mind whispered doubts, questioning the reality of the situation. I was a city boy, lost in the vastness of the countryside, drawn to a man who was as different from me as night and day. Was this real, or was it just a fleeting summer romance, a temporary escape from the realities of my life? Thought nagged at me, a persistent worry that threatened to shatter the magic of the moment. He sensed my unease, his hand tightening around mine, and he looked at me, his eyes filled with concern. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice gentle. I hesitated, unsure of how to express the doubts that were swirling in my mind. "It's just, I don't know," I stammered, searching for the right words. "This feels too good to be true," he smiled, a sad smile that tugged at my heartstrings. "Maybe it is," he said softly. "But for tonight, let's just enjoy it. Let's forget about the world outside and just be here together." I nodded, my heart heavy with unspoken fears. He was right. For tonight, at least, I needed to let go of my doubts and embrace the moment, to savor the feeling of being in his arms, of being connected to him in a way that I had never been connected to anyone before. He took my hand and we walked back towards the farmhouse, the silence between us once again filled with a quiet understanding. Inside, he lit a fire in the fireplace, the flames casting dancing shadows on the walls. We sat on the floor, wrapped in a blanket, watching the fire crackle and pop, the warmth spreading through us. He told me stories about his life on the farm, about his childhood, about his dreams for the future. I listened, captivated by his words, by the passion in his voice, by the depth of his connection to the land. He was a man of the earth, rooted in its soil, his very being a testament to its power. And I, the city boy, felt drawn to him like a moth to a flame, captivated by his raw, untamed energy. As the night deepened, the fire began to die down, casting long, flickering shadows across the room. We stood up and he led me to the bedroom, the same simple room with the patchwork quilt that I had seen earlier. He turned to me, his eyes filled with a mixture of desire and tenderness, and he reached out, his hand brushing against my cheek. "Stay with me tonight," he whispered, his voice husky and low. I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest, the doubts that had been plaguing me earlier fading away, replaced by a sense of anticipation, a feeling of surrender. He took my hand and we lay down on the bed, the silence of the farm enveloping us in its embrace. As we drifted off to sleep, I knew that this night, this moment, would forever be etched in my memory, a reminder of the connection that we had shared, a testament to the power of love even in the face of uncertainty. I woke to the sound of birds chirping outside the window, a symphony of nature that was a stark contrast to the cacophony of the city. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, painting the room in a warm, golden glow. I turned to find him sleeping beside me, his face relaxed and peaceful, his arm draped across my chest. A wave of tenderness washed over me as I watched him, his features softened in sleep, his breathing slow and even. He looked younger, more vulnerable, the weight of the world lifted from his shoulders. I felt a surge of protectiveness towards him, a desire to shield him from the harsh realities of life, to keep him safe and happy. I gently brushed a stray strand of hair from his forehead, my touch feather light, careful not to wake him. He stirred slightly, a soft groan escaping his lips, and his eyes fluttered open. He looked at me, a sleepy smile spreading across his face, and my heart melted. "Good morning," he murmured, his voice still thick with sleep. "Morning," I replied, my voice barely a whisper. He pulled me closer, his arm tightening around my waist, and he kissed me, a soft, lingering kiss that spoke of affection and intimacy. The kiss was a gentle reminder of the connection that we had forged the night before, a silent promise of something more. We lay there for a while longer, wrapped in each other's arms, lost in the quiet intimacy of the morning. The world outside seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of us, cocooned in the warmth of the bed, the silence of the farm our only companion. But as the sun climbed higher in the sky, the realities of life began to creep back in. The doubts that had plagued me the night before resurfaced, stronger than ever. I was a city boy, out of my element in the countryside, drawn to a man who was as different from me as night and day. Was this real, or was it just a fleeting summer romance, a temporary escape from the realities of my life? The thought nagged at me, a persistent worry that threatened to shatter the magic of the moment. He sensed my unease, his hand tightening around mine, and he looked at me, his eyes filled with concern. "You're quiet," he said, his voice gentle. "Is everything all right?" I hesitated, unsure of how to express the doubts that were swirling in my mind. "It's just, I don't know," I stammered, searching for the right words. "This feels too good to be true," he sighed, a heavy sigh that seemed to carry the weight of the world. "I know," he said softly. "I feel it too." He paused, his gaze fixed on the ceiling, as if searching for the answers to the questions that were plaguing us both. "But maybe," he continued, his voice barely a whisper, "maybe that's okay. Maybe it's okay to just enjoy the moment, to let go of our doubts and fears and just be together for as long as we can." I nodded, my heart heavy with unspoken fears. He was right. For now, at least, I needed to let go of my doubts and embrace the moment, to savor the feeling of being in his arms, of being connected to him in a way that I had never been connected to anyone before. We got out of bed and he went to the kitchen to make breakfast. The smell of coffee filled the air, a comforting aroma that helped to dispel some of the lingering unease. We ate in the kitchen, sitting at the small wooden table, the conversation flowing easily between us. He told me about his plans for the farm, his dreams for the future, his hopes for a life filled with love and happiness. I listened, captivated by his words, by the passion in his voice, by the depth of his connection to the land. He was a man of the earth, rooted in its soil, his very being a testament to its power. And I, the city boy, felt drawn to him like a moth to a flame, captivated by his raw, untamed energy. After breakfast, we went outside, walking hand in hand through the fields, the sun warm on our skin. The air was fresh and clean, filled with the scent of wildflowers and freshly tilled earth. It was a world away from the noise and pollution of the city, a world that felt peaceful and serene. He showed me more of his farm, explaining the intricacies of his crops, the challenges of weather and pests, the sheer joy of seeing a seed grow into something bountiful. I watched him mesmerized not just by his words, but by the way his hands moved strong and gentle as he touched the plants. There was a connection between him and the land, a symbiotic relationship that was both beautiful and awe-inspiring. I felt a pang of longing, a yearning to be part of that connection, to be part of his world. As the day progressed, a sense of melancholy began to settle over me. I knew that my time on the farm was coming to an end, that soon I would have to return to the city, to the life that I had left behind. The thought filled me with sadness, a deep sense of loss that threatened to overwhelm me. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to go back to the city, to the loneliness and isolation that had defined my life before I met him. I wanted to stay here with him on the farm, surrounded by the beauty of nature, enveloped in the warmth of his love. But I knew that it wasn't possible. Our lives were too different, our worlds too far apart. We were two ships passing in the night, our paths crossing for a brief moment before diverging once again. The thought was heartbreaking, a painful reminder of the fleeting nature of happiness. He sensed my sadness, his hand tightening around mine, and he looked at me, his eyes filled with understanding. "I know," he said softly. "It's hard to say goodbye." I nodded, tears welling up in my eyes. He pulled me close, his arms wrapping around me in a warm embrace, and I buried my face in his chest, sobbing softly. He held me there, his touch gentle and reassuring, his presence a comforting balm to my aching heart. We stood there for a long time, lost in each other's arms, the silence of the farm our only companion. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the fields, painting the landscape in hues of orange and purple. It was a beautiful sight, a breathtaking panorama of nature's artistry, but it also served as a reminder of the passage of time, of the inevitable end of our time together. As the last rays of sunlight faded away, a sense of finality settled over me. I knew that it was time to leave, that the moment had come to say goodbye. I looked at him, my eyes filled with tears, and he looked back at me, his eyes mirroring my sadness. He leaned in, his lips brushing against mine, a soft, lingering kiss that spoke of love and loss. It was a kiss that I knew I would cherish forever, a reminder of the connection that we had shared, a testament to the power of love even in the face of separation. We broke the kiss and I turned to leave, my heart heavy with sadness. He didn't try to stop me. He simply stood there watching me go, his eyes filled with a mixture of love and resignation. As I walked away, I glanced back one last time and I saw him standing there, silhouetted against the darkening sky, his form strong and sure, a man of the earth rooted in its soil. And I knew in that moment that I would never forget him, that he would forever be etched in my memory, a reminder of the summer that changed my life, the summer that I met him, the summer that I fell in love. The drive back to the city was a blur. The landscape, once so enchanting, now seemed dull and lifeless, a stark contrast to the vibrant beauty of the farm. The sounds of the city, the constant hum of traffic, the blare of horns, grated on my ears, a jarring reminder of the world I had left behind. I felt like a part of me had been left behind on the farm with him, amidst the rows of crops, under the vast expanse of the sky. The memory of his touch, the warmth of his smile, the sound of his laughter echoed in my mind, a constant reminder of what I had lost. I replayed every moment we had shared, every word we had spoken, every kiss we had exchanged, trying to hold on to the memory, to preserve it like a precious jewel. But as the miles stretched between me and the farm, the memory began to fade, like a photograph exposed to the sun, the edges blurring, the colors becoming less vibrant. I knew that time would pass, that the intensity of the emotions I was feeling would eventually subside, but I also knew that I would never forget him, that he would forever hold a special place in my heart. I reached my apartment, a sterile box in the sky, a world away from the warmth and charm of the farmhouse. The silence of the apartment was deafening, a stark contrast to the sounds of nature that had filled my days on the farm. I walked through the empty rooms, feeling a sense of emptiness, a hollowness that mirrored the ache in my heart. I unpacked my bag, the scent of the farm clinging to my clothes, a faint reminder of the man I had left behind. I held his shirt to my face, inhaling the familiar scent of his cologne, a bittersweet reminder of his presence. I lay down on my bed, the silence of the apartment pressing down on me, and I closed my eyes, trying to conjure up his image in my mind. I saw him standing in the fields, silhouetted against the setting sun, his form strong and sure, a man of the earth rooted in its soil. I saw him smiling, his eyes crinkling at the corners, a genuine warmth radiating outwards. I heard his voice, soft and gentle, whispering my name in the darkness. And I felt his touch, warm and reassuring, his hand taking mine, his fingers intertwining with mine. The memories flooded my mind, a bittersweet symphony of joy and sorrow, of love and loss. I drifted off to sleep, my dreams filled with images of the farm, of him, of the summer that changed my life. The next morning, I woke to the sound of my alarm clock, a jarring reminder of the realities of my life. I got out of bed, the weight of the world settling back onto my shoulders, and I went to the kitchen to make coffee. As I sipped my coffee, I looked out the window at the city stretching out before me, a vast expanse of concrete and steel. It was a world away from the peace and tranquility of the farm, a world that felt cold and impersonal. I knew that I had to move on, that I had to return to my life, to my work, to my responsibilities. But I also knew that I would never forget him, that he would forever be a part of me. I went to work, the day passing in a blur. I went through the motions, performing my tasks, interacting with my colleagues, but my mind was elsewhere, back on the farm with him. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had left a part of myself behind, that I was incomplete without him. As the days turned into weeks, the intensity of my emotions began to subside, but the memory of him remained, a constant presence in the back of my mind. I thought about him often, wondering how he was, if he was happy, if he ever thought about me. I wondered if I would ever see him again, if our paths would ever cross again. The thought filled me with a mixture of hope and longing. I knew that it was unlikely, that our lives were too different, our worlds too far apart. But I also knew that anything was possible, that fate had a way of bringing people together, even when it seemed impossible. I continued with my life, working, socializing, trying to move on, but the memory of him lingered, a faint echo of a love that had touched my life, a reminder of the summer that changed everything. And as the seasons changed, as the leaves turned from green to gold, I knew that I would never forget him, that he would forever be a part of my story, a chapter in the book of my life, a memory that I would cherish forever. The farm, the man, the harvest, it was all a part of me now, woven into the fabric of my being, a testament to the power of love, even in its fleeting form. And as I looked towards the future, I carried the memory of him with me, a beacon of hope, a reminder that love can blossom in the most unexpected places, even in the heart of a city boy drawn to the earth, captivated by a man, forever changed by a summer on the farm.